my dear old Swanee. I'd give the world to be among the folks in DIX. I even know my mammy is praying for me down by the Swanee. The folks up north will see me no more when I get to that Swanee shore.
This is Great Chefs of the South, a culinary tour of the Southland featuring the talents of some of the region's finest chefs. This time from Florida, Norman Van Aken. From Alabama, Frank Stitt. And from Georgia, Elizabeth Terry.
The canopy that thematically covers South Florida restaurants is New World cuisine, and Norman Van Aken is one of the fervent practitioners of the Caribbean-tinged cooking. Indeed, he coined the term. From his popular Normans in Coral Gables, he offers an appetizer of Yuka-stuffed shrimp with orange mojo.
Okay, the first step is going to be the mojo. I have cumin seed and salt, and I'm putting this in a molcajete here, which is a very ancient Cuisinart. This has got garlic and Scotch bonnet. This chili right here. Put that in there as well. You don't have to use something like this. You could use a Cuisinart or a knife, but it's kind of a nice thing. I've got some hot oil that I've got working right here. And here I've got a combination of some Spanish sherry wine vinegar and sour orange juice. I'm going to go ahead and mash this up. The molcajete gives it a very nice texture, and it allows the sense of the cumin to really work in beautifully with the sense of the Scotch bonnet. Like I say, you don't have to use this, but it really gives you a better texture.
Scotch bonnet peppers are reportedly the hottest on earth.
Okay. Let me go ahead and add my... just so I can kind of get it up out of the molcajete here in a moment.
The liquid was a combination of sherry vinegar and orange juice.
Just put this into a bowl, and because my olive oil is hot now, which is kind of one of the secrets to the mojo, or sometimes we call it moje here, is it really releases the perfume of the garlic and the cumin. So it might bubble a little bit when you add this, depending on how hot the oil gets. Just going to go ahead and... you want to see that sizzle like that. That helps the garlic and the cumin really come up. And that's the mojo.
Butterflied shrimp will be stuffed with mashed yucca.
Okay. This is yucca. It's a tuber, and like so many of the tubers that we see here in South Florida, it looks a little bit, looks a little odd, I guess, at first, but you get used to seeing these things and you start working with them. It's a very firm tuber, and as you can see, it's not easy to cut it, but it's white on the inside, and this kind of bark-like exterior is removed carefully. And the bark, of course, is discarded, and then it's cut up and to sections just so it can cook easily and evenly. And sometimes yucca is served boiled in a mash like this, and a lot of times it's served also fried, which is really great, addicting flavors of fried yucca. Think of French fries, but with yucca fries. And we take the shrimp and we just butterfly cut them. And then we'll just take a little bit of the mash, and it just has a consistency of like mashed potatoes, and we just put them in there. But yuca is not mashed potatoes. It has a much different flavor. It's kind of got a very, very unique, some people say it reminds me a little bit of the flavor of mashed potatoes with chestnuts. You just go ahead and put them in there like that, and we'll do 2.
Dip the shrimp in flour, beaten eggs, and breadcrumbs.
Okay, we'll just drop these in here and everything but the tail. Very simple. Coat the yuca there too as well. And then into the breadcrumbs. And these can be done hours ahead or overnight and wrapped and kept in the refrigerator.
The shrimp are cooked in hot oil.
I'll just kind of like delicately splash a little bit of the hot oil up onto the shrimp, but I'll be turning them around also, so. Now the yuca is in there, but you'll want to be careful as you lift it out that it doesn't fall out in a lump on you. It's not likely, but remember the shrimp is raw, but the yuca is cooked, so you don't have to concern yourself with that.
Cook until golden brown, then drain just before service.
Okay, we're ready to plate the dish. So we'll take our shrimp and we're going to provide a little base of them with a little bit of, in this case we have a little bit of tartar salsa, homemade tartar salsa, with a touch of Scotch bonnet in it, and that'll help keep our shrimp nice and firmly planted as you move to the dining room. But it also helps the sharpness of the Scotch bonnet tartar salsa with a pickling will really be refreshing against the richness of the yuca and the shrimp. And depending on how you're going to go ahead and serve this dish, sometimes you might want to like add a little bit of a little mesclun of lettuces dressed in a light vinaigrette. With a cool kind of action of the lettuces, this really is a nice first course. Then of course we have our mojo, or moje, as I said before, and we'll just go ahead and mix that up. And just drizzle a little bit over the shrimp and onto the plate. And for one more little addition of sort of a New World addition, I have a little bit of annatto-infused olive oil here. Very red from the annatto seed, and we'll just go ahead and add a little bit of that to give it a little bit more dramatic color. And this is the Yuka-stuffed shrimp con mojo.
Frank Stitt's high-flying restaurants Highlands Bar and Grill and Bottega are the hottest tickets in Birmingham. His interest in cooking began just north of the city at his grandparents' farm, and he demonstrates serious roots in Southern cooking with the entree, braised rabbit with molasses, bourbon, slab bacon, and grits. A marinade for the rabbit pieces, including the liver, starts with fresh thyme and rosemary.
I have some toasted juniper right here. You just warm that up in a dry skillet. You can grind it in a spice mill or chop it by hand. I'm going to crush it a little bit so that it doesn't run away from me on the cutting board. We're going to add just a drizzle of olive oil and some of our molasses or sorghum syrup. You can certainly add too much of that, so we want to be careful. But this does help the rabbit get a nice caramelized crust on the outside.
Bourbon and red wine are added.
I may add just a little bit of red wine too. So what I like to do is to kind of massage these flavors of the marinade into the rabbit. And you can let this marinate for a couple of days, for a couple of hours. I think overnight is good. I've also got some garlic in my marinade.
The front and hindquarters are braised, which begins by sautéing with lardons of smoked bacon.
My pan's actually a little bit too large for this amount of rabbit that we're doing.
Two more pieces are added.
Let's start with the skin side down. So this is almost a southern variation on a coq au vin, where you're using an old chicken that's cooked with red wine. So we're using our molasses and our bourbon to get a little of our southern flavors with our slab bacon and a few mushrooms and some grits.
The bacon is removed before the rabbit is finished.
I'm going to turn the heat up and just get a little bit more color on the rabbit. That's about what I like.
The rabbit is removed from the pan, a little oil is added, and a mirepoix of carrots, celery, and onion is softened.
We've got our bay leaf and thyme in there. We're going to add a splash of bourbon. We like the alcohol cookout, and this is one thing we have to be careful about, is not to do this directly over the fire, because you have a little too much fire from that. So I like to cook it a little bit before I put it back on there. So the bourbon is cooked out. We're going to use just a little bit of port, some red wine, and let that reduce by about a quarter.
Morel mushrooms are sautéed for garnish. Chicken stock is added to the reduced red wine mixture. Then the rabbit pieces go back in.
So let's add our rabbit back, and we're going to just cover this and then simmer this very gently in a 325-degree oven for about 45 minutes.
Just before service, the rabbit loin is grilled to medium. When it's almost done, the liver is also grilled. The braising liquid is reduced and finished with a little butter.
So we use a stone ground, organically grown cornmeal grit. It's a yellow cornmeal. White cornmeal is just fine too, but one thing, please, is don't use quick grits or instant grits. They're really not the same, and doesn't take very long to cook traditional grits at all. So this is our braised leg and shoulder, or forequarter. I'm going to use just half of this loin for this one. The loin you want to be slightly pink, a little bit medium rare. And the same with the rabbit liver. So we have these wonderful mushrooms. I'm going to scatter a few about. Our lardons, cubes of slab bacon. our sauce. I think I would suggest a slightly smaller strainer. And then if you'd like to garnish with a little bit of a fresh herb, some thyme, some flat-leaf parsley, some rosemary.
From the evocative ambiance of Savannah, the dessert is prepared by Elizabeth Terry at her namesake restaurant. Elizabeth on 37th received an Ivy Award from Restaurants and Institutions, while the chef was cited in Food and Wine and voted Best Chef Southeast by the Beard Society. Here is her dense chocolate pecan tort.
All right, it's a very simple crumb crust, a nut crumb crust. Let's put the pecans in the food processor, brown sugar, flour, and cubes of butter. Fresh grated nutmeg. It smells so wonderful. And we want to do what we did before, just incorporate the butter with the nuts and make a crumb. See, it's crumbly, but still lightly moist. Just pour it into our parchment-lined or wax paper-lined paper. Spread the crumbs around. Evenly coating the bottom. And then just very gently press the crumbs together.
Bake at 325 degrees for 8 minutes, then cool and remove the parchment paper.
Now I want to... Boy, that's still hot. I'm just going to remove the paper this way in that real hot pan from the crust, and then put the sides back on my pan. At this point, you can slide it onto a plate if you want to also.
Meanwhile, 6 ounces of sweet chocolate and 2 ounces of baking chocolate are melted. It will be combined with 2 egg yolks and hot, but not boiling, heavy cream.
We'll fold in, and I dried off the bottom of the pan so that I didn't get any water in the chocolate. Now I'm just going to stir in the egg yolks. The chocolate will tighten a bit as you do this. And now pour in the warm cream. There's steam rising from the cream, but it hasn't boiled. It's not boiling. And this again, don't stir vigorously. You're trying to mix a firm thing with a soft thing, so it just takes a little bit of patience. And then pour it into the shell.
Chill until set. The tort is decorated with whipped cream, flavored with sifted cocoa, sugar, and vanilla. It's piped onto the chilled tort.
The chocolate tort is also delicious with just fresh berries, eliminating the whipped cream if you want to.
Chocolate-dipped pecans will garnish the cake. Also creme anglaise and strawberry puree.
Just put the tort out on the plate. And at the restaurant, at Elizabeth's, we decorate with just a little sauce, berry sauce. And then a few strawberries. Strawberries and chocolate are a real traditional combination. And the Banyuls, of course, is a wonderful wine with this dessert. All right.
Blammy is waiting for me, praying for me down by the Swanee. The folks up north will see me no more when I get to that Swanee shore.
Para conhecer os produtos da linha Great Chefs, acesse o site www.superstation.com.br ou ligue para Direct Shopping 011 7295 9666.